Aloha, I'm Carolyn Tanaka and welcome to Live at the Legislature. Every week we sit down with members of the House of Representatives to talk about issues, concerns, and what's happening at the state capitol. Today the House of Representatives will be voting on House Bill 1900, more commonly known as the State Budget Bill. It is an onerous, massive document filled with figures that make the eyes glaze over. But it is also a document that runs the state and pays the bills. This morning joining us is Representative Sylvia Luke. She is the chair of the House Finance Committee. Welcome, Representative.
Good morning, Carolyn.
So why don't we jump right into it? Let's start with how much is the proposed budget and why should we care?
So this budget bill today that we're passing, it amounts to $7.4 billion, and as you said, it funds anywhere from schools, hospitals, the roads, Department of Transportation needs, the airport, so it has all various things that covers government service.
So in putting, not everything can be funded, in putting together this year's budget, what was some of the thinking that went behind it?
So usually what we do is we don't look at just balancing this year's budget, we look at the budget for the next 6 years, and there were a couple of disturbing trends when this budget was proposed by the governor to the legislature. Let me just point out two things that that were presented that we had to correct or consider. So one of them was they made a huge miscalculation, which they caught later on, which amounted to about $50 million of what's known as unfunded liability, which wasn't calculated in the budget. The second thing that was presented was the governor's budget included about $67 million worth of Airbnb or short-term rental new taxes. Mm-hmm. However, the governor did not present us with any bill amounting to the $67 million. And because the governor's budget assumed the $50 million that was going into unfunded liability and $67 million of taxes that they claim were realized, which didn't have any bills attached to it. It left a big hole when we looked at the budget. So that was a little bit troubling this year. So even with that, what we had to do was, we had to do some cutting of programs or cutting of services to make sure that we pass the balanced budget, not for this year, but for the next 6 years.
Well, let's talk about the priority this year for the legislature is homelessness and affordable housing. Where in the budget are those things? How did you work with that in the budget?
Because both the House and the Senate and the legislature believe that this year the priority should be given for housing and homeless services, instead of putting those things in the budget, there are various bills that are passing. So including Housing First, rental subsidies, Ohana Zone, because there are multitude of bills that are being covered by bills, we have decided to give more public input to those bills, to take those items out of the budget and have the bills consider all those important issues. But with that said, let me just make clear that the budget does include $30 million of what's known as Ohana Zone. So that's transitional zones that we could help homeless individuals to get to permanent housing and provide services. In addition to that, there's an additional $35 million appropriated for affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And currently in the budget itself, what's provided in state government, we have about over 88 active contracts for homeless services amounting to $39 million.
So it's not, so the legislature has been funding the homeless programs for several years now in the base budget. And so this year you've got an additional amount of funding that's going to those programs?
So in addition to what's being considered with the 88 active contracts, we will be looking at different initiatives. Clearly, one of the things that have been missing is mental health services, because many of the homeless individuals we see do have mental health issues and other health needs. So one of the priority is to look at mental health services as well.
The budget is not only, obviously you have a whole pile of things that need funding in state government, and you are not able to address all of that. You also can use the budget to set policies. Can you give us some examples of how you've done that?
Yeah. So thanks for that question. So over the years, one of the things we have done is really look at vacancies. So one of the things we wanted to do was not allow departments to use monies appropriated for positions for other expenses. So sometimes they would pay overtime or equipment, and that's not a good policy. So when I became chair of finance about 6 years ago, we have taken a hard approach on vacancies and cutting down the number of vacant positions, because those ultimately become slush fund for the departments for them to use it for other expenses, and that's not a good approach. So over the years, we have really reduced the number of vacancies, and even in this budget, we have eliminated 200 positions amounting to $10 million. And what we want to do is we want to encourage departments to fill those positions, because some of those positions are important positions, like healthcare providers, for instance, invasive species personnel. And so these are important policy decisions that the legislature has made, and we want to continue to work with the department so that they can fill these positions as opposed to leaving them vacant.
So that to make government a lot more efficient and effective, you can do things in the budget to accomplish that. What I really found interesting is what you did with the Hawaii Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility.
Right. So we have Hawaii Youth Correctional Facilities. About 20 years ago, the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facilities on the windward side house about about over 100 youth. And so for 100 youth, there were about over 120 guards. Today, because of the attention of moving to, as opposed to incarceration, we wanted to go into rehabilitation and treatment. We have reduced that population from over 120 to 20 kids. So we have 17 boys and 3 girls at the facility. In spite of that, we continue to have over 100 personnel at HYCF, including over 70 youth correctional officers. That's not a good approach, because what we need to do is we need to change the mindset. We cannot continue to treat kids like criminals. We want to give them a second opportunity. So we've been converting those positions to social workers. And so that's one of the things we will do.
Thank you so much. A lot to talk about in the budget, not enough time. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.